Head over to thebestsongever.com and purchase our new hit, Together Again. It is a cover of Smokey Mike and the God King. That's Jeremy Boring and Michael Knowles. And with your help, we will smash our way onto the Billboard charts.
You know, I grew up in Chicago. Everybody knows it's an urban liberal story and all that stuff. And we hated this idea of judging someone based on the color of their skin instead of the content of their character.
Amen.
I go to New York City at the start of Occupy Wall Street. They started, Luke was there too, so Luke definitely knows this. They started off with something they called the General Assembly, where everybody would sit down and they would all, raise their hands to speak, and then they would do twinkle fingers, they called it, if you liked, because clapping was offensive to people who couldn't hear or whatever. They had something called progressive stack. That meant if you raised your hand to speak, but you're a white man, bottom of the list, because white men are privileged. So they would actually look at people and say, can I get anybody who's not a white man? You can't speak. And if you look like one, you have to shout out something about why you were actually a minority. I knew there was one instance where a guy raised his hand and they go, anybody who's not a white man? And he goes, I'm gay. And they go, okay, you can talk now. That qualifies. Mm-hmm. One of the most shocking things I ended up seeing, which was a real wake-up call for me, was when they created something called the Spokes Council. This is where they decided the General Assembly is inefficient. Let's have a better, more efficient model of decision-making by breaking everyone up into different groups based on the job you do. If you work on the website, you're part of a website group. If you work on cleaning, sanitation, you're sanitation group. And of course, let's have a group for only black people, a group for only Asian people, a group for only Mexican people, a group for only women. And they actually decided to have political voting power on resources based on your race or sex. And then there was a moment, one day I'm walking on the side of Zuccotti Park and there was a black man sitting up on this planter. And he said, these people are nuts. What do you think the press is going to say when they find out they're segregating everybody based on race to make their decisions?
But they just destroyed their own movement. I mean, I'll be honest, I was annoyed by Occupy Wall Street, but I was kind of sympathetic to the core idea that you have this massive series of financial crimes in 2008 and not one person is punished. And that actually the real scam is economic. They're looting the country, and someone needs to call out the banks on this in finance world in general. Occupy Wall Street was totally eclipsed by identity politics, which I believe was, the antidote. Like, the banks got together and the people who benefit from the banks are like, oh, let's just pit them together based on race. Like, this is a widely held theory. But for the occupied Wall Street people themselves to be embracing identity politics undercuts their whole argument.
It was subversion.
It was subversion.
I met Luke there, and you ask yourself, everybody here knows Luke. How does someone like Luke and I come together? And it's because originally it was exactly as you described.
Yeah, it was people from the left, it was people from the right. There was daily marches against the U.S. Federal Reserve. There was a lot of libertarians. There's a lot of people who were representing the larger ideas of the Tea Party, a lot of Ron Paul.
Yes!
And then this coalition of individuals from the left and right scared the crap out of the
Yes, exactly.
But then they sent in crazy people. That's how I got to know Tim, because me and Tim were at these spokes council. No, we were at these spokes council meetings, and we were like, these people have lost their frickin' minds. They're frickin' insane. They weren't here on day one. They came in here, and they're literally saying, black people got to stay here, white people have to stay here. We're like, this is retarded. This is stupid. This makes no sense at all unless you're trying to subvert and destroy it from the inside. And I think that's exactly what happened. And then the corporate media said, we got to obsess about race because this is how you destroy populist movements. And this is why we keep talking about race over and over again. When it's the simplest, stupidest thing that should have, of course, not be a major issue, we should be talking about the larger, better things and the more amazing things in life, not just the superficial bullshit that doesn't matter.
I told Steve Bannon I wish he came to Occupy Wall Street and helped, because that first week was so different from what it turned into. There were, I remember meeting a couple, and they were in their 60s with an American flag, and they were upset about the bank ballots and subversion. And I think what happens is it's very easy for liberals to infiltrate in a city like New York, and it's very difficult for conservatives to stand their ground in such a place.
Mm-hmm. And it's not a theory, Tucker. I mean, you could see that the people that run Wall Street, they love the woke stuff, like Larry Fink, because then we never talk about income inequality or wealth inequality. The woke smokescreen is a protection racket for them.
And they're paying half the taxes.
Yes, I mean,
like why is it twice as virtuous to invest as it is to go to work every day? We tax the things we want to discourage, and we don't tax the things we want to encourage. That's why cigarettes are so expensive. So if you're taxing investing at half the rate as you are working, what you're telling me is it's twice as virtuous to invest. But is it? I don't know that it is. I kind of admire people who go to work every day. Like, what is this?
And it's not even typical investing, right? Let's be honest. This is mass. This is using other people's money. OPM, like hard. By the way, they're using labor's money, Tucker. As you know, they're using teacher and firefighter and police officer money and getting 3% management fees and 30% of the upside. By the way, they don't pay any tax on any of the earnings. They just say, oh, you know, we can't get rid of the carried interest loophole. And they have this whole insane tax scheme designed. And I wonder what wealth are they actually creating, or are they just moving trillions of dollars of money through a cheap instruments and taking 3%, 4% off the top. But the woke, this is what's important. We have to realize it. Occupy Wall Street was so scary to them because it was diverse, because it was bipartisan, is that they Tim, do you actually think that Goldman Sachs said, go send in the identity politics people? I'd believe it. Like, do you think that there was a meeting at Goldman Sachs where they said, go bring in the NYU trans, like, race people to go distract them from talking about bank bailouts?
Not Goldman Sachs,
whatever.
But powerful political interests. This is a fact. There were people who were on salary at large progressive nonprofits who were at Occupy Wall Street, on paper, getting money from a nonprofit and paychecks. And the funny thing is, when this was accurately reported, and sometimes inaccurately reported, they'd say the people down there are getting paid by insert nonprofit who receives money from, say, George Soros. All the activists would go, I didn't get my Soros check. And I'm like, dude, John over there works for this nonprofit that is literally a progressive voter registration nonprofit, and he's organizing the assemblies right now. Yes, that is literally happening. And so perhaps it was as simple as, hey guys, here's an opportunity, we better harness it. And it bums me out to think the reality of Occupy Wall Street was progressives being smarter and faster than the populist right.
And you look at the stated positions of, like, the Open Society Foundation and George Soros, it conveniently ignores wealth inequality, income inequality, home ownership. It's like open borders and racial transformation and trans stuff. It's like, wait, hold on a second, George Soros, are you afraid that there might be a real movement to go take and tax your $20 billion foundation that doesn't pay any taxes and is being used to, you know, subvert and infiltrate the country? But I think what has happened is, especially post-Floyd, is that every major company is fine doing a $50 million check to some CRT, DEI company, as long as we don't talk about the fact that young people can't buy homes. Larry Fink is terrified that this audience, or just Republicans, Democrats, young people all across the country, will unite and lock arms and say, why is it that we can't buy homes and we're talking about, you know, people's pronouns?
Yeah, that's right. Sure. I just want to say this before you jump in. I firmly believe in, you know, I've changed my positions, obviously, since I first started with political commentary like 10 years ago. I used to be just a very, like, diehard, total free market guy. And I've moved on that. I believe property rights are extremely important, but part of the reason that I believe that that's true is because people who own property are a lot more difficult to control and push around. And the issue with communism and the issue with hypercapitalism, even though they express themselves very differently, and even though under communism you have many horrific instances of people being slaughtered. I don't mean to downplay any of that, but one of the same economic issues you see with both of those is that all of the property ends up centralized in the hands of a small group of people who have control over it. So of course, in a communist country, that's the party members, and in a capitalist country that doesn't have the proper regulations in place, that's the capitalist class, and your average person ends up without property. So what we need to do is structure our regulations so that the largest number of people possible can own property. I think that's the way that you have a flourishing system.
I'm hopeful.
If you own nothing, you're not going to be happy.
No. Right.
It's the opposite of what the World Economic Forum says.
What the World Economic Forum, the principle they're operating under is actually derived from a quote from Harriet Tubman. I freed many slaves. I would have freed many more if only they knew they were slaves. The inverse is what the World Economic Forum wants to introduce. Take from them the knowledge of their freedom and they won't miss it.
Are people so pissed off? Is the pendulum now swinging in the other direction?
Yes.
Because that's what I'm seeing.
That's why they have to indict Trump, right? Because for years the media could just say this person's racist, this person's sexist, this person's homophobic, and that was enough to destroy that person's career, but it didn't destroy Trump. And so because the media no longer has the ability to shut people up, the state actually has to come in and shut people up. And you're right, it's making people angrier.
This DEI stuff is not just in IBM, it's in everywhere.
Yeah.
I'm getting the messages from all the people inside all the companies. So it feels like whatever pressure it was to adopt the DEI, now it's just the pendulum swung. Is that happening?
It's the bravery. I mean, how about we just talk about the hard numbers of these Disney movies, and what did they lose, $1 billion in their last releases? The latest Marvel movie was the lowest grossing out of anything that they've done so far. Yeah, go broke.
Can we get a round of applause for that?
Disney lost $1 billion on its films?
I think, what is it, the last 10 films lost a collective $1 billion. The latest MCU movie, which was the Marvels, was lower grossing than The Incredible Hulk in 2008, which is considered to be their worst. I think people are just saying, we'll find something else. We're done with it. It's kind of remarkable that some of the greatest victories come from people just being like, I'm leaving. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
They just say, I'm not going to... Look, you know what I always used to say whenever they would make these video games that were all woke or whatever? I'd say, hey, that's great. I'm really happy for you that you got your video game with the pink-haired woman. I'm not going to buy it, but you do your thing. And then it turns out nobody else wanted to buy it either.
So, James, you have other companies reaching out to you?
Yes, constantly. Usually on Signal or on our website, just nonstop. Banks, institutions. I mean, I prefer video because I think documents are not as powerful, but it's nonstop. It just seems like it takes one and then a crescendo.
You know this. Just give them a camera and have them ask the HR person about the document,
they
right?
And
then you get a video.
There's a lot of this,
right?
like, I have a mortgage, I have a wife, I have a kid. It's always these conversations.
How do you respond to that?
It's tough. I mean, I don't have a mortgage and kids, not yet. But it's tough to empathize. The one individual was very inspired by that one clip that you and I were talking about.
It's very powerful.
The pastor
was like a minister.
It was a minister talking to me about how afraid he was.
He should resign from the ministry.
I'm not a minister.
Honestly.
I'm not qualified to advise the minister. And I said to the person, what I say is, what's the worst thing that can happen to you if you tell the truth? And he goes, oh, gee, I never thought about it that way. And this individual with an IBM had seen that clip and also saw the Elon Musk, F you Bob speech. And Elon Musk, IBM and Disney canceled advertising, and the individual, let's call them IBM Deep Throat, said, what's the worst thing that happened to me? Because it kind of eats at you if you're seeing something horrible and you're just doing the job for the paycheck and the pension.
The worst thing
that just tears at your soul. So you're confronted with this horrible decision. I either do this job and I can't live with myself, or I tell the truth and I lose my job. And what I'm seeing is the trajectory of people, you know what, I'm going to tell the truth and lose my job.
The worst thing that could happen to you if you tell the truth, you'll be set free.
And I feel like
I agree with
I feel like Tucker and I.
That's Christianity.
Absolutely.
The truth will set you free.
That's right.
The truth shall set you free. And sometimes the worst thing, being free, is actually the best thing. But they don't see it that way because they got the mortgage and the job and the roof and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. They have to have food, shelter, et cetera.
And it is hard. It is scary. I can respect that.
Well,
it's very difficult.
Dostoevsky said, your worst sin is that you have destroyed and betrayed yourself for nothing. And when you think about that quote, when you look at the situation that a lot of people are in, they think they're making the right decision for themselves and their mortgages and their families right now, but in reality, they're making the worst decision for their future, for their children, for this country, as of course all these little decisions, everyone's saying, I'm just doing my job, that keeps adding to the initial destruction as this country is being sabotaged from within. And it's only being sabotaged with our acquiescence, with our participation in it, with us voting for it, with us clicking and liking and giving our money to these creatures that serve essentially Satan. These people don't serve you, don't care about you. You need to make sure every dollar you spend goes towards a good cause.
You need to download Public Square and shop at businesses that support your values, our values, and that's one simple way, because maybe all you're going to do is buy a, barbecue pulled pork, but you're supporting a company that believes in this country.
I want to plug something else, something I just became a member of, and you guys should too. And Tucker, you've had a crazy year. Tucker Carlson Network, people can become members too and get access to your content.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to build something that can't be canceled. But may I say something about standing up and taking the abuse for doing that? I do think it's high stakes for a lot of people, and all my kids are grown, and I've already been through the cycle of being poor, rich again. And so I don't find that as scary, but I do think if you've got kids in the home, it's scary. I mean, it's not a small decision to make. But I also think here's one potential upside. If you tell the truth and stand on principle and act in a dignified way as a man, the people around you want that. Women want that. They don't want to be married to a wuss. And I do think you know, in the dynamic in marriage, especially with small children in the home, is, you know, don't screw it up. We've got, you know, a lot at stake. We need the money and all that. But I think if you say calmly, like, you know, my dignity requires me to tell the truth, you will get a lot of understanding. And I think long term, your wife will respect you more. They want a little fire in a man. And your children will respect you more. And that is, man, that is worth a lot, I think.
Absolutely.
That's a very good point. And also the example that you're setting for your children, right? Because they're going to grow up and they're going to be faced with similar dilemmas.
Yeah, no one remembers the names of the people who killed Joan of Arc, honestly, to pander to your Catholic sensibilities. But no,
I love it.
No, I mean, you know, she kind of, you wouldn't want to be burned to death. That's the kind of last thing you'd want.
No.
On the other hand, how'd you like to be, you know, immortal for your bravery? Mm-hmm. I don't know. There are actually much worse things than that, and living like a slave is one of them.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.